Wow. Treat me right. Treat your body right, and you don't have to rally. So, yes, I did say that we will be speaking and having a chat with Dr. Seshni Gouri. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Valma, and thank you for having me on your show. I'm so grateful. And also to be talking about something which is so topical and so relevant. So, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to hear your voice again. And yeah, the weather is so beautiful and hot, but not everybody else can deal with this weather. It's like being in the Caribbean at the moment, which is a cheap holiday, isn't it?
Yes, and I think if you've grown up in a country where it's very warm, like I've come from South Africa, so I'm used to the weather, so I'm able to cope with it, and I'm sure you as well, from warm climates, the Caribbean. So, yeah, not everyone is able to cope with it. So that's why talking today about burnout and about the effects of the heat wave is so important.
I was looking at the World Health Organization's website and came across what they talked about, written about the heat wave, and in terms of the body's not able, for some people, particularly those frail or with ill health, and particularly children, are not able to regulate their body temperature, and so the heightened temperature actually releases adrenaline, and it just goes out of sync, doesn't it? Really?
Yes.
And put people at risk of deterioration in their health. And apparently, there's been quite a few deaths and hospital admissions, because some people don't realise that the high temperature causes, heat cramps and exhaustion, but also if you suffer from heart problems or respiratory problems, it can actually exaggerate those condition itself, can't it?
Yes, so I think taking care of your health is so important, and your mental health during this time when there's heat waves. So ensuring that you are taking enough water, hydration, having rest, having breaks, covering yourself with sun cream, and also ensuring you're having regular meals, especially for people that have physical health conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, the elderly population, babies, people that are not well, immunocompromised people, and women that are pregnant. So it's really important that this group of people take extra care during the heat wave. But to be honest, as you said, Valma, it's not just certain groups. It'll be everyone will be at risk of any physical health deterioration, especially if there's a heat wave, and if you are in the outdoors exposed to the heat without any covering. So it's also a good idea. So practical things like carrying an umbrella, having a sun hat, and maybe even a small fan, those small handheld fans that can cool you down, if you're at work, or if you are out and about and you need some sort of cooling down. And especially if you think about it, in London, just going in the underground, I'm planning to go to London on Tuesday, and it's going to be one of the hottest days, I think Monday and Tuesday, and they're advising the temperatures are going to be over 40, and they are advising that it's a health emergency. So I think people then need to take care whether they are going to go out, what transport you're going to use.
And I think the other issue is that, if you're in your home environment, it's about how you create an environment that your body can cool down. I mean, one example was having towels that are really wet and just hanging them somewhere, so it would have to create a cooler environment.
I'm going to take that suggestion from you. That's absolutely, you learn something new every day. So that's fantastic. And I think my ones would be, as Valma said, have some wet towels or even wet face cloths, ready available, especially if you've got kids around. Schools are actually closing early, Valma. So my kids' school, Monday to Wednesday, they're closing half day because of the heat wave, and trips to, like, they had trips to Thought Park have been cancelled. So it's about thinking about what sort of activities you're going to do, whether you're going to stay indoors. I think they're advising people, Velma, to stay indoors. So that's why your suggestion is so important. So another thing is also having fans on, creating that cooling environment, as you said. Having ice cubes and ice packs in your freezer is a good idea. Ice lollies, I'm always having those, especially for the young kids. And just keeping yourself cool.
Seshni, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
They talk about you can get cramps, but some individuals actually suffer from cramps, and it's sometimes maybe due to salt intake. Now, we know that if you take a lot of salt in your food, it can actually create you to dehydrate because it's taking the salt.
Yes, that's true. So usually people can get cramps for different reasons.
Just a minute. Would the argument be that if you take a lot of salt intake in your diet during the hot weather, what can be the impact?
Yes, so having salt in your diet can cause you to become dehydrated. So that's sodium chloride. So in terms of, salts in the body can get, it's a hyponatremia or hypernatremia. So if you take an excess amount of salt, it can actually cause hypernatremia. So an excess of salt results in the body becoming dehydrated by the way in which...
And also the other impact is that you will get bloated feet. If it's, for some people, they might notice a bit of swelling in their feet, which could be the salt, because they're having too much salt, and therefore it's causing their feet to swell. Is that correct?
Yes. So I think swelling of feet can be also, again, different reasons, but one of them can be that it can also be due to underlying conditions like heart conditions, lung conditions, or localized lesions, and lymphedema. But I think, as you said, so I think the electrolyte imbalance is something that's important, especially during the hot weather. Therefore, it's important that especially people with underlying physical health conditions or even mental health conditions that are taking medications, you need to ensure that your blood salts and electrolytes are balanced. So taking enough water, ensuring that you are having the right type of foods. Even the foods that you eat should be foods that are really healthy. And as you said, less salt and less oils and fats.
Yeah. The other thing also, I mean, some individuals might feel, cramps in drinking water, because sometimes water doesn't actually have the most pleasant taste. I mean, I tend to drink a lot of fizzy water, but this morning, I cut some lemon up and got some mint from the garden, and I just put it in a glass bottle.
I love that. And that is...
People can do flavourings with their drinks just to give it that bit of interest or a bit of different taste.
Yes. Well, I do the Happy Doctor's Kitchen, and that's one of the things I suggest. And it's actually a daily thing in our home. Even the kids are hooked onto the lemon water. So lemon and lime is also very good, especially for people with heart conditions. Lime water, drinking that. Lemon, as you said, cutting up slices of lemon and adding some mint leaves. You can actually cut even pieces of fruit and put in your water, and it just gives it an extra bit of flavor, and it's healthy as well and happy.
Right.
Way of drinking.
So in terms of individuals looking after their body. As we keep saying, your body is your temple, so you must look after it. So we've just had a general conversation about how to look after your body during this heat wave, this Caribbean heat wave in the UK. They're just going to have a quick break, play just a track, and then we're going to come back and talk about what is burnout. Have you ever feel that your body just cannot go on, or you've refused to have that break? So I'm going to just play a bit of music, and then we're going to come back and talk to Seshni about what is burnout. So
thank you, Valma.
1 minute, yes? Okay. Take it.
Yes.
is burnout?
Hi, Valma. Yes, thank you for that break. Yes, so I burnout is something which is probably more common than we actually think it is. So I just wanted to say that from the outset. And people listening might be experiencing burnout, but they might not even realize that they're experiencing burnout. So it's actually occupational a phenomenon where employees experience a mixture of physical and psychological symptoms which result in decreased job satisfaction and productivity. So, in simple terms, it means our inability to cope with stress, which results in people feeling physiological, physiologically and psychologically affected and emotionally as well disturbed. So it can manifest in different ways, and there's different signs and symptoms of burnout. But I think in actual fact, it's another term for chronic stress reaction or chronic stress effect.
So, if how would an individual recognize that they might be suffering from burnout, chronic stress? Because some years ago, I suffered from burnout. I felt lethargic. I felt that lack of interest, lack of motivation, that it was felt weak. What are the traditional symptoms?
Yes, so I mean, thank you for sharing your personal story. And I think, as I said, it's so common that that most people, at some point in their life, if are affected by burnout. And also, can I just say, there's different causes. Obviously, it's stress at work, and also, COVID. A lot of people, because of COVID, have been experiencing burnout. So it's actually more common now. But the symptoms, as you said, is like symptoms and signs of recognizing it. Many people might not recognize it, but it might be, as you've just said, lethargy, feeling extremely exhausted, tired, not being able to complete tasks or complete work, lack of motivation, as you explained as well. So sleep disturbance is obviously going to be very common as well. So a person with burnout will have difficulty with sleep disturbance. They have some physical symptoms. So physical symptoms, for example, like headaches, and also shortness of breath. And then behaviors, which how it affects their behavior will be they'll start to feel very irritable, and hypervigilant, so very sensitive to emotional responses. You can also become, the psychological effects I'm talking about now is some people end up feeling very suspicious about colleagues, and they can become depressed, Velma, which is not surprising, and develop a negative attitude, and then start coping with substances as a result of burnout.
Can I ask a question here? Because it can be confusing in terms of the diagnosis, because somebody might be going through burnout, or they may be going for depression. How will they be able to recognize whether it's depression or it's burnout? Or how can a family member identify whether this person is suffering from depression or burnout?
Well, that's a very, very good and interesting question, because, to be honest, it's like a vicious cycle. So, for example, if the person is suffering from burnout, they're going to become depressed if it's not treated and if they haven't recognized it. So, it's probably like a double whammy where a person has burnout and then they've developed a comorbid condition like depression, or they've developed a addiction problem using substance to cope with, or alcohol. So it is difficult, I would say, to tell which of the two is the person experiencing. But I think one way in which we as professionals will be able to identify, or family members, is the longitudinal history, the history of when was the onset of the symptoms. And when you start speaking to a person, when we do an assessment, when we speak to someone and take a history, as you know, Valma, being in the mental health field as a social worker, you will start to find out exactly when did the onset of the symptoms start, what was the trigger, and then we'll be able to identify, okay, is this burnout, or is this actually depression, or is it burnout and then a development of a depression as a result of it. So it will help in terms of understanding how to treat the person, and also directing them onto whether they need a holistic approach of medication, psychology, and social aspects of treatment interventions.
Okay. The other question I want to add to this is, how will they know whether if there's a difference between a person being bullied? I know we weren't going to be talking about this topic, but you can have the similar symptoms if you've been bullied at work, isn't it?
Yes, I would say that even bullying can cause some sort of burnout, because when someone starts to be bullied or intimidated, and it can be in different forms, it can be verbal, emotional, it can be physical, it can be sexual, it can be different forms of bullying, and that in itself can then result into someone starting to feel overwhelmed at work, tired, exhausted, and also have a negative attitude towards their work. They might develop depression, they might start to cope with substances. So I think it's difficult then, even with that, to actually identify. But therefore, that's why taking a history and understanding the person. So each individual case of a burnout, there might be a trigger. And as you pointed out, bullying can be one of them. If I can just say that the three main features of burnout, which is really important, is that the feeling of exhaustion and energy depletion. Two is feeling distant and negative about the job. And three is reduced personal efficacy and performance. So these are the three main things that will affect someone. So anyone at work, the employees will start to see there's a decline in the person's performance. They might be turning up late to work, or there might be an increased incidence of absenteeism. They might also start with physical health complaints, like getting headaches or physical somatic complaints, and find ways of avoiding certain jobs or avoiding situations with certain work colleagues. So there's different telltale signs, but I think it is important, as you've said, we need to recognize it. So whether it's at work, whether we as individuals, or whether our family members or loved ones are able to recognize it.
The other thing that sometimes we don't recognise, that the person can actually lose personal interest in personal care, isn't it?
Yes, so as a result of burnout and exhaustion, if someone is so tired, Velma, and they have decreased motivation, even just to get up and go to work, and then symptoms of depression set in, then we do find that people start to neglect their appearance. So they might neglect their self care. They might neglect even self care in terms of the foods that they eat. So they might overeat and start to either pick up weight or lose weight, depending on the type of stress that they're under. So, actual fact, as we had a discussion before this, you said, burnout is basically like chronic stress. And it is. It's when we expose to stress, and it can be any form of stress. It could be relationship stress, financial stress. It could be situations at work like bullying, as you said. It could be a physical health as a result of COVID. So different types of stresses that we're going through, that can result in, and if not treated, not identified, not managed or coped well, then people can start to have burnout symptoms.
So, in terms of treatment, I mean, there's the sort of medical treatment, but what about self-healing? The natural way of trying to overcome this. We do have talking therapies, but how would you suggest somebody can go about in terms of creating their own self-healing?
Yes, I think it's important. So self-care and stress management is really important, and self-awareness. And I think the first things is always a holistic approach to managing burnout. So there's simple things that people can do to avoid burnout. So identifying and preventing it. So prevention should always be the first thing, is preventing burnout. We'll talk about that. Second thing is thinking about holistic approach. So looking at medication, so treating any underlying condition like depression or anxiety symptoms or panic symptoms, um, the medication, and then psychology. So talking therapies are important, or CBT, and then social aspects of care and support. So I want to talk primarily about the psychology and talking aspects. So education, psychoeducation is important. So finding out what burnout is, like we're talking about it today, getting some resources about it, understanding what it is, the symptoms and signs, and then being able to implement different strategies. So the psychological strategies, I would say, which to be honest, I when you called me about talking about burnout in the week, I actually we attended a talk by Professor Dinesh Bogra, and he gave a talk on burnout, but specifically burnout with the health professionals and doctors. So it can happen in any profession, and there's the evidence, and what the advice was about managing it is mindfulness. So things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, exercise, taking care of yourself. So all these practical measures, Valma, which people tend to neglect when they have burnout or when they suffer depression. These are things that they need to start getting themselves into a routine and start doing these forms of mindfulness, meditation, yoga, exercise, and eating happy and healthy. And after that, I would suggest, as I said, medication and psychological support, and then social aspects. So social aspects would be involving your family members to support you, telling someone, I think the first step as well, Milma, is recognizing it and telling someone, I think I'm suffering from burnout, or I think I need help. So asking for help, seeking help from friends and family or confidant, someone you can confide in. Maybe not at the workplace, because sometimes, Valma, I don't know how it is with you, but if someone is having some problem, they might find it difficult to actually approach their employees. But we do know that lots of work agencies and occupations do have a well-being and recovery service. So if you do have an opportunity to contact them and tell them confidently and all confidentially, and also then get treatment and help from them and support with a mentor even, and support, and speak to your boss. If you recognize that you are feeling burnt out and that you might need to take time out, speak to your employer.
Yeah, I think there's other groups that actually impact on, and that's parents. Busy children having to take children to school, having to deal with children's behaviour. I mean, they can also be subjected to burnout.
Yes. And I think what I was going to say as well, the other practical things to do is, Valma, when someone's going through burnout, and I think we need to think about it as a recovery and well-being process and take baby steps in order to get yourself back to where you were. So you might not be feeling 100% your normal self. And by that I mean is start formulating a routine, get a diary, start planning the essential things you need to do to prevent burnout, and all the other non-essential things, the things that you might be wasting time on. For example, you might be saying yes to too many things that you might need to do, or signing up to too many things to help other people, or you might also be spending too much time on social media and not exercising enough. So I think it's about recognizing where your time is going, formulate put it in your diary and have a routine. And for me, I find that helps for me and also for the rest of the family, especially my kids. So having all of us having a routine, having a structure, I think is really important. And I think that's one of the main things that we can think about doing when you are feeling quite having symptoms of burnout. So it's also important that people can say no. If you're committing to too many things, we need to think about saying no, because what can happen with burnout is that we end up feeling overwhelmed and stressed because we're committing ourselves to so many things. So even for myself, I've recognized sometimes that, we all need to sort of take time for yourself. It's a lot to do with self-care. Sorry, Valma, I was just carrying on talking and I realized the phone, the the connection. Yes. So
Was it your end? Because you just cut off. I don't know why.
yes. So we were just saying about the burnout and about
Put you back on.
yeah.
Okay. So we talked about if. Hello.
Hi, Valma. I'm still on. The connection's still yeah. Apologies, we're just having some connection issues, so hopefully we'll get back on and um we will be finishing shortly as well. So talking about burnout, about stress, the effects of stress, and the importance of self-care, meditation, mindfulness, and psychoeducation. So we'll just wait for Velma to get back on.
Hello.
Hi, Velma. Yes, I'm still on. Yeah, there might be some connection issue. I do apologize for that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get you. The mobile number you've called is.
So I think I'm going to say goodbye because I think there might still be some connection issues, but I do apologize, and hopefully I can recap on the burnout and stress and also the heat wave. So take care wherever you are in the world, and make sure you are staying hydrated and safe in the warm weather, as there's been alert for the weather that's coming up next week on Monday and Tuesday. Hi, Valma. My apologies. So stay safe, everyone. And hi, Valma. Okay, it might be the heat that's causing some technical issues, but namaste and have a wonderful day, everyone. And lots of love from me. Thank you.